My name is Jim Marascio. I'm CEO and founder of Equals 11. We are a certified Salesforce Consulting partner, and we do a lot of work with nonprofits, but not exclusively nonprofits. The deck that we're showing today, Jen is going to send out afterwards, so take notes if you want, but she'll send out a PDF of it. There's also a couple downloads, and there's a QR code at the end. So if you start going, oh, that's interesting, I'll probably say something, but there's a QR code where you can download some things that we're going to be talking about today as well. When we founded the company about 3.5 years ago, I didn't think we were going to build a company to serve nonprofits. But throughout my career, I've been involved with a lot of nonprofits, nationally, locally, regionally. I actually have a board meeting up at UNCC this afternoon. So at 4 o'clock, I'll be up on campus because I'm on an advisory board for one of the colleges. And I currently sit on a national educational foundation that raises money for college students. So it was kind of natural for us to fall into this space. And I've got with me today Vivy Abraham. Vivy is in Brazil. She's one of our Salesforce consultants. She's been working with Salesforce for over 11 years. And for the last several years, she's been working with us. And one of the examples we're going to talk about today is some work we've done with National Kidney Foundation. She's worked with National Kidney Foundation over the last couple of years, and she's going to speak to some of that. So Vivy, you can wave. I do have a speaker here, an extra speaker, so hopefully you'll be able to hear her okay. But when she is speaking, you may need to quiet a little bit. And we'll have some Q&A at the end. She's definitely much more technical than I am. So she'll probably field some of that. But so that's a little bit of a background on us and who Vivy and I are. So what we're going to be talking about today is AI for nonprofits. And we've been fortunate to work with a few nonprofits over the last year or two on AI initiatives. And what we found is that nonprofits tend to be run by people that are very passionate about their cause. They care a lot about what they do. They're always very experienced, but sometimes they lack some of the resources, and sometimes their staff lacks some of the expertise needed to do some things. And we run into the same thing in the for-profit business, but we see it accentuated in the nonprofit space. And so we find that nonprofits are encountering the exact same challenges or the exact same desires from their boards and CEOs and whatnot to leverage AI for good, but they don't always have the expertise or the budgets to do it. And so what we've been doing over the last couple of years is starting engagements with some consulting to help them plan and prepare for that. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So our goal really is to today talk about some of the foundational needs if you're considering AI initiatives, how to tackle those. So a couple surveys, Salesforce at the end of last year identified that 19% of nonprofits say they have a strategy. I'm not always convinced that they truly have a strategy versus an intention, but they're out there talking about it, and that's a good thing. And so your boards, your CEOs are hearing about this in the news. They're seeing what for-profit businesses are doing, and they want to experience those same things. So couple success stories. I think one of the things we often get asked about right out of the gate is who's actually doing this. You know, everybody's talking about it, we're not seeing it, or maybe we stumbled when we tried to do something. So a couple of nonprofits that we know about and we've worked with here, and a couple examples, and we'll dive into National Kidney Foundation and Good 360 a little later in the presentation, but I want to highlight a couple things they're doing. So Big Brothers Big Sisters last year implemented Agentic AI to streamline the onboarding process of matching volunteers. So they call them bigs with children, they call them littles. And what they did was streamline the automation of capturing that data, vetting people, and then matching them up. And what it did was it reduced the onboarding time by 21 days. So they're getting mentors working with children 21 days faster than they were. And that's obviously freeing up time for people to do other good things for those organizations. Good 360, something similar. You may or may not be aware of them. When Hurricane Helene hit Western North Carolina, Good 360 was one of the large charities that acquired or collected donations, mostly from corporate donors. So corporate donors might have apparel that they want to give out to people, or they might have diapers for babies, or they may have food or whatever. And what Good 360 does is they work with these corporate sponsors and donors to take that and put it in the hands of the people that need it. Some of that's perishable. Some of it's just urgent. Something, we had Hurricane Helene, and we needed to get stuff in people's hands ASAP. And so what Good 360 did was leverage AI to organize that data and sort it and figure out where it needed to go from a logistics standpoint. And in last year, as an example, my first year using it, it created 1,000 hours it freed up of time of their people. So it reduced the amount of time it took, but that also is giving 1,000 hours back to those organizations to be able to serve their purpose. National Kidney Foundation, Vivy's going to talk about that in a little bit. She worked on this initiative specifically. They used Einstein Prediction Builder and Einstein Next Best Action to review their donor bases. That could be volunteers, or it could be cash donors, and help their organization prioritize where their staff is spending time to increase their donors. Who should they be spending time in, by looking at patterns of behavior and engagement with the organization on where they're spending time, how they're spending time, and where are we going to have the biggest bang for our buck. For example, with their development officers going out asking for more. And so by prioritizing that time using AI and data that's been fed into the system, they're able to increase the amount of donations they're getting, or the amount of volunteer hours they're getting by doing that more effectively. So again, the goal here is to talk about strategy. How do we even approach some of this? Because people are again having the conversations, but they don't know where to start. Or very often they're starting too fast. They're starting without a plan. And like so many things, proper preparation prevents poor performance. So lots of P's there, a lot of alliteration. But what we found is by taking some time to work with them and say, okay, is your nonprofit even ready for AI? And how do we tackle this? It gets us started. So Vivy, why don't you start, and hopefully everybody can hear her, talking about AI readiness.
All right, thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone, I'm Vivy. So let's start with readiness. So I think that the question here would be, is there a quick formula for knowing if your nonprofit is ready for AI? Short answer will be no. So before taking on any AI initiative, organizations should assess those three things that you see right there: data maturity, organizational alignment, and technical capacity. So if we break that down, starting with data maturity, there are some questions that we need to answer. And you'll see that later on, we'll share a QR code for a readiness checklist, and some of those questions will be there. But I'm going to mention those here as well. So starting with data maturity, first thing would be, do you have clean, consistent, and mostly error-free core data? From past experiences, I can tell you that duplicates, so the duplicate records issue, they're always top of mind. So this is a recurring thing. Bad, inconsistent, or incomplete data that will result in poor AI training, or even in an inability to train the AI. And nowadays, we normally come with the jargon that goes, your AI is just as good as your data. So we need to keep that in mind. Your AI is just as good as your data. This is our mantra. So all these data issues, they often have to do with data entry processes, as well as user adoption. So change management, the human factor, user adoption, this is quite important as well. And of course, automation and data validation rules, they can absolutely help to address these data issues. Couple more things that we should pay attention to. So do we have the right attributes for AI use cases? And even more importantly, do we understand, does the organization understand what data is being collected, why it is being collected, and how it's being stored? So this is pretty important. And I think that the main one here, is there a single source of the truth for critical data? Usually the answer is no. And I can tell you from previous experiences, and I come from organizations where the swivel chair between systems to reach to the right and accurate data, it was just a normal thing. And we know for a fact that, I mean, this makes like day-to-day activities quite harder. So having a single source of the truth makes things easier, for sure. I know that this is not a standard, but this is, I mean, this is critical. Second item here to be assessed, everyone. So organizational alignment. We need to ask, do we have executive sponsorship? Is your CEO or board actively supporting AI exploration? Also, we need to think about the culture of experimentation. I'm sorry about that. So at least you know where this accent comes from, right? This is from the south of Brazil, so I apologize for that. But I mean, the culture of experimentation, it means that like if something fails in a controlled environment, is it really seen as a learning opportunity rather than a setback? And again, we cannot forget the human factor. So the question here would be, is your staff generally open to adopting new tools that can make them even more efficient? So again, questions here that serve as like food for thoughts. And finally, on the technical capacity aspect, we need to ask, is your Salesforce well configured, actively used, and maintained? You should consider how you're supporting your Salesforce environment. Also, you need to verify if you have an internal team members or a relationship with a Salesforce partner who has that AI and machine learning experience. So this is also important. Do you happen to know what Salesforce AI features are already there available for you to use? And also, I mean, is your team, we're talking about like internal team, so is your internal team prepared for the ongoing maintenance of AI solutions? So these are some questions, and I'm bringing some examples of what we are sharing here with you guys, which is the readiness checklist that you'll be able to download. So this is part of the AI readiness assessment. We need to be very attentive and I mean, to all these questions, because they will serve as your guide.
Yes. You want me to next slide?
Yeah, next slide.
So I'll just comment there. A lot of times when we start working with a client, we start looking at where in the organization is the best place to start. So you're probably going, oh no, we can't do that, we can't do that, we can't do that. But if you think about it, you may find that in one department or one area of the organization, yeah, you've got good support from leadership. Our data is really good there. And maybe that's the best place to jump off and say, can we get a quick win and maybe develop some excitement that might get buy-in elsewhere, that might help with user adoption and improving data quality and those types of things that'll help you down the road with some other area of the organization.
Right.
So, remember when Sky presented to us, she said AI is going to get something wrong.
Yeah.
It's going to. It's going to tell somebody some bad information. So what are you doing to prepare for that inevitability? I think that gets right back to what Vivy said about the learning, the culture of learning versus, complaining.
Yeah, a lot of this really is about planning and figuring out where to jump off.
Yeah.
So Vivy mentioned the AI readiness checklist. It's got about 15 questions that'll kind of help walk you through, hey, are we ready and where are we ready? And at the end of the end of the presentation, there's a QR code. And again, Jen's going to send out a link as well.
Okay. Yeah, Jim, just wanted to mention that along with the readiness checklist, there are some practical steps for assessing your AI readiness, and this is some of what we've done with NKF that we're going to mention. We're going to talk further later on. So you should conduct surveys or workshops with your key stakeholders. You should review your existing data and systems. That's for sure. And you can always engage with Salesforce partners for readiness assessments. So just wanted to add to the fact that along with the readiness checklist, this will come along with conducting surveys and workshops and being in close communication with key stakeholders. Another thing to keep in mind about the readiness checklist is that if most of your answers, they are yes, you've got a strong foundation. So this is really good. You should identify your high impact use cases and just quickly start piloting those. Now, if you have a mix between yes and in progress, you just should focus on your in progress areas and may start some quick win projects as well. But if it's mostly no, then I mean you should work on improving your data quality and getting leadership buy-in at first before diving into AI. So just wanted to mention that. Now, talking about impact versus feasibility. So this is how we approach the implementation of an AI roadmap. We can use these 4 quadrants here as our guide. So like for quick wins, again, I mean, this is always a good way to start. It may not have that super impact, but it is going to show like constant progress. So this is about like the items that are high impact and high feasibility. Strategic initiatives, we know that those are like bigger wins, but they cost much more. They are normally like long-run projects with significant resources, and at the end of the day, they cost more, but they can be transformational. So, I mean, this is high impact and low feasibility given resources and cost and all that. With regards to niche items, they will, if you classify your roadmap, I mean, if you have niche items there in your roadmap, they normally refer to like what we call the minor tactical enhancements. So they are low impact, high feasibility, but I mean, low impact, and they should not be a primary focus. That would be our suggestion here. And last, I mean, we should deprioritize what is classified as low impact and low feasibility. Jim, any other thoughts here?
Yeah, so as an example, a lot of times people get these great ideas about a big project. Oh, what if we could do this? It's going to save so much time, but the organization isn't necessarily ready for it. And that would be something that might fall in that yellow area. And it may be a really huge project. And so it's hard to justify. As an example of the quick wins, we internally did, we looked at what are, I'll give you a second. Anybody else? We looked at internally what are activities that we asked our Salesforce admins internally to do. Shut the door. That are things that your average user can't do, but they're relatively low-hanging fruit for an admin, like maybe change the status of everything that equals this to like a case. Make any cases that are in this state, assign them to this person. That might be a something that is more of a distraction for an admin, but you could create an AI tool that a user could have access to go and do a bulk change of something that you trust that user to do if it's controlled by the AI, so you know it can only do this exact thing. And that might be a quick win where you can relieve your admin of kind of nuisance activities, but that do have value to the business and they don't take a lot of time. So we did a couple of those in less than a week internally for ourselves, as an example. Yeah. So jumping ahead, you're going to hear, you'll read case studies, you'll get emails from Salesforce about all these stories. Oh, look, so-and-so did this and this. I got one, I don't know, a month and a half ago that said, build an AI SDR in an hour. And this came from Salesforce. So can it be done? Yeah, maybe. The reality is you're going to hear stories that are going anywhere from hours to months to do this stuff. And it's important to know when I share here an implementation plan, it's the same steps whether you're doing it in hours or you're doing it in months. There's some examples here. We've got a 20-week example here. The first project that we did for National Kidney Foundation, Vivy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it took 12 weeks, the first AI project. The second one we did for them was 4 weeks. So some of that was because we foundationally built some things in the first project that we could then leverage for the second project. Some of it was a little bit of a different scope. So so recognize that, you know, how long does it take to do this stuff really can vary wildly. Again, we did a couple small projects with agentic projects in-house that we did in a few days. But we knew exactly what we wanted. They were super straightforward scope. They were do like 1 or 2 tasks. It wasn't do 37 things. So things like that. So just be aware of that. What we find very often happens is that organizations will underestimate what needs to go into it because they don't take the time to go through this. So I'm going to share these next 2 slides. Again, there's a QR code. You can download this. I would say use it kind of like a template. Are you checking these boxes? Are you clearly defining the objective with SMART goals? And everybody here probably knows what a SMART goal is. Are you getting the right alignment? Have you verified the data quality like Vivy talked about? Have you identified pilot scope? So very often people will come to you with an idea. Okay, what's the pilot scope of that? What's the MVP version of that? Because their idea might be great, but it might be huge. How do we get a quick win again out of that? And then starting to go through and getting into the engineering portion of it in that week. Here it says week 5 to 8, but week 5 to 8 could be day 5 to 8, or it could be week 2 to 3, whatever. I guess 2 to 3 would be close to 5 to 8 days. But as you go through here, then you're going to look at developing a pilot. So let's do something in the controlled environment with a smaller data set that may not be the full scope, but let's pilot out what this is and start looking at your quality checks of this. How are we going to test this? How are we going to verify it? It's important here to have stakeholders that understand the data because they're living in it every day probably, to validate what the AI is doing, because the AI is going to do what it sees as the pattern and what you tell it to do. And that may not always be right. And you want somebody that understands it well enough in this pilot phase to start going, yeah, that makes sense. This, how can we validate this? Or, to recognize when something's wrong. And very often when AI goes bad, it's because they don't plan it, you don't pilot it well. And then you start hearing these stories about, well, the AI hallucinated and told us to do this. Well, you should have caught where it was going wrong earlier. So go through that pilot execution phase. Here we're talking about a couple months, but again, that could be a couple days, it could be a couple weeks, it could be a couple months, depending on the project. And then finally starting to look at rolling it out. And rollout, it's really critical to identify a core group of people who are going to be the first adopters, the first ones to use it. Again, they're probably the ones that understand the data. They're probably the ones that are the most enthusiastic about the idea. They're probably the ones that are going to give you that feedback so you can iterate quickly. But take the time before you even start identifying who those people are, getting that buy-in and working through that, because what's inevitably is going to happen. When we did our first project with National Kidney Foundation, they came back and said, this is great, can we do this now? And that's where our next best action thing started. Came and we gave them all the information and they said, okay, we want to be able to take this to the end users and tell them exactly what they should be doing next. So Jim, you need to call Jen next. Here's how much you should be asking her for. Here's how you should be communicating with her. She doesn't respond to phone calls, email her, that's where you'll get her, or text her or whatever. So looking at the data and getting those people that are going to buy into those things next. So that's really critical. So moving on, I mentioned Good 360. We want to talk a little bit more about 2 different use cases, and then we're going to wrap up because I know we're getting close to time. Good 360, I mentioned, they were able to identify in the first year 1,000 hours. So that's half of a person that they got back by implementing this AI. Simultaneously, they significantly reduced the time that they were taking to do activities to get that those goods matched up to the people that needed it. They talk about reducing their carbon footprint. What does that mean? It was a logistics thing. They weren't paying for storage. They weren't paying to move product around places unnecessarily because they were able to streamline everything. And they celebrated that they got a 20% reduction in carbon footprint through just more efficiency of logistics of storage and movement of products as they got them out to people. And probably the most important thing is they were able to get things to people who are in need because of a crisis, an earthquake, a fire, a hurricane, 3 times faster. So that's really why they exist. So they were able to do all of that, and they got back a half a person's resource that they could reapply that time. So it wasn't like they said, okay, we're going to take a full-time person and make them half-time or something like that. They actually were able to elevate their responsibilities to do higher value activities that were providing more benefit to the organization. So a lot of these things kind of cascade through in how they provide value. Vivy, why don't you talk a little bit about the National Kidney Foundation project?
Right, yeah. So our AI case study with National Kidney Foundation. Our engagement with NKF, it actually started with one of their technology leaders stating, "We don't know what we don't know. We need your help to uncover that." So that was very interesting. And at that time, I mean, they realized that they had a loose CRM and data strategy, and they wanted to understand what the possibilities they have, like how could they make better use of their data and get the most out of Salesforce. And it did have like good volume of data. So our work with NKF, it began with a health check and assessment, so a consultative health check and assessment, where we reviewed their data, their Salesforce environment, and their main workflows. As Jim said, we had that committee with the main stakeholders, and we ran all those workshops to go through this assessment. We then prioritized projects recommendations for them, and we named it as our initiative prioritization and planning work for NKF. So after just 2 weeks, we delivered a report with 5 proposed initiatives. And among those initiatives, we had 2 AI-focused ones, the Einstein Prediction Builder and Einstein Next Best Action. So the goal that we had with the Prediction Builder, with Einstein Prediction Builder, was to get a more insightful view of their constituents through predictive scoring. So we built predictions, like the main one that we built for them was the engagement scoring for that constituent. So the question that prediction was answering was, what is the constituent level of engagement with NKF on a scale of 1 to 100? So that was the main one. That was the main card on their contacts page there in Salesforce. I mean, the constituent engagement scoring. They also asked for a professional membership engagement scoring. So the question there would be, what is the professional member level of engagement with NKF? We also had one specific for donation increase. What was the likelihood that this donor would donate more to NKF? We had another one for recurring donation probability. So what is the likelihood that this donor will make monthly recurring donations? We also touched on donor retention and donor churn scorings as well. So what is the likelihood this donor will be retained versus will churn? So on the contact information page in Salesforce, we basically displayed all these prediction cards that gave NKF users like an at-a-glance view of the level of engagement of that contact with their organization. And now, more towards the technical aspect, I want to get to, I don't want that we have like a tech talk here, but some of the predictor fields that we used, they included like donation history fields, like total amount, frequency, recency of donations, volunteer activity, like number of hours, types of activities, event attendance, advocacy efforts, email engagement, like opens and click-through rates, also subscription preferences, communication preferences. So all those fields, they gave us means to create those predictions, those scores. So all these data pieces, we used all these data pieces to provide us, we built logic. And just one side note here, this was all implemented through declarative programming with Salesforce, like point and click Salesforce implementation. So all these data pieces, they provided us with like positive and negative examples through which we could provide an engagement scoring. Then from all these predictive scores, I mean, they became like key indicators for a next phase, implementing the Einstein Next Best Action. So I do not recall, Jim, from the top of my head, but I mean, after like the first 12 weeks, we even had a gap there. They were like piloting the Einstein Prediction Builder before we started with Einstein Next Best Action. So just as Jim said, we had these key stakeholders that would serve like as multipliers within the organization for helping with the change management and the adoption of that functionality, of that new functionality. So all these predictive scores, they serve for us for a next phase implementation with Einstein Next Best Action. So we took the predictions and we turned them into concrete actions. That is the essence of combining Einstein Prediction Builder with Einstein Next Best Action. So it's about coming from predictions and turning all that into concrete actions. I mean, the system suggesting concrete actions that can improve like engagement, donations, and further. So again, it's coming from a prediction and suggesting an action. And I'm going to provide now a few examples of some of the next best actions that we built for NKF. So one was like an offer of a first-time donation opportunity for an engaged constituent that haven't donated yet. We also, another suggestion of action there was to connect with a likely to lapse donor. So we would see how likely that constituent was to turn, and then we would connect with them and send a specific message to reconnect with them. We would share an impact story with a low engaged constituent. So if we see a low engagement scoring in this contact record, we could share an impact story. And this is something that would come to your screen. I mean, at the moment that you open the constituent, the contact information page there, you would see that the system would offer what the next best action would be. So it's all automated. We could offer volunteer opportunities for a highly engaged constituent. We could invite to attend a local event. We also had this next best action for offering flexible giving options for a constituent with a low likelihood of a donation increase. So, I mean, it's a low probability here that they are going to increase on donations, but we can offer flexible giving options. And among others, and there was another one specifically for expressing gratitude for a highly engaged contact. So I think that we ended up with around 18 different actions from all these predictions that we initially built with Einstein Prediction Builder. So essentially, I mean, in short, we mapped predictions to actions. It's, as I said, this is an automated capability there and the system would trigger a personalized or re-engagement message based on the scoring. And the result of all of these, guys, we're basically talking about like smarter engagement, a more personalized outreach, prioritizing high probability donors, while also, I mean, we were also reactivating lower engaged constituents. So this was the project in a nutshell. This was a big thing. This was a very nice engagement. I was very glad to be part of that. So, Jim, back to you.
Thanks, Vivy.
Thank you.
So just jumping ahead, I know we're kind of at time here. There's a QR code here that has that readiness checklist, also has that project plan example. There's links to it. Jen's also going to send out the PDF, so you'll have the link to it from that. If you've got any questions for us, we're happy to field them now. Otherwise, I'll get out of the way and let Alex take over. Any questions for Vivy or me?
I know it's pricey, which is not as much an issue for big national nonprofits as for small ones. How many can one user do all the Einstein the work you need in an org, or do it just multiple people need to be utilized?
They do. So like with next best action, anybody who's consuming a next best action has to be licensed for Einstein next best action. So Salesforce is Salesforce, and so you're going to need Data Cloud, and you're going to need an MBA license for any user that's consuming those recommendations.
Thanks.
Vivy, anything to add to that?
No, you're right. Yeah.
I was just curious if you could share at all about like the rollout of some of these tools on the case studies. How did people react to them? I mean, I know you showed us kind of the impact that they had, but as we kind of talked about at the beginning, a lot of people are maybe resistant to AI tools. They think it's taking their job over, whatever.
Sure.
How did you do you have anything you can share about how it was received and how the training went?
Yeah, Vivy, do you want to comment first, or do you want me to?
I can go, Jim. So we were lucky in a sense that we had, I mean, these key stakeholders, and they were super engaged. So we had essentially one person from each of the areas, and I used to run all these workshops, and they were, they took that as a priority. So they were helping us with requirements. So all these predictions, when I was talking about those categories of fields, I mean, this is something that I just named like 5 or 6 categories, but there were, all sorts of different fields that we used as special criteria for defining these positive and negative examples for obtaining that scoring. And they were, our stakeholders there, they were super attentive, and they were really engaged. So we were lucky from that perspective. Now I know for a fact, and Jim, you can help here. It took us like 12 weeks to have around 12 weeks, I think, for the Einstein Prediction Builder rollout. And I recall that they were not engaging, all their users at first. So they were going to be like the multipliers within the organization for helping other users and for helping with this change management process. Now, with the case study that we've put together, we were trying to obtain some metrics for them. And I know for a fact, and Jim, you can add to that, I know that Jim is going to work with them on obtaining further information. So actually, we do not have enough information to know about how they are using that in terms of numbers or like metrics or KPIs that they have. But
So what we found with them was user adoption did not meet their targeted goals at all. There's a medium-sized subset of users that love it, and they're living in it, and they're thriving because of it. There's a lot of other users that aren't. And I think what we're seeing here is culturally, they're not sharing their successes internally as much as they should. And we've had some conversations. I actually am in the process of scheduling a meeting with some of those key stakeholders so we can gather some of that data and help them increase user adoption. So there's a bunch of people that have it and they're just not using it. And then the ones that are using it love it. And they're just not, I guess, evangelizing it as much as their leadership would like within the organization. And it's a big organization. They're distributed, so it's not like people are all in one office and sharing stuff. And that's part of the challenge. So again, are they having success? Yeah, they're having tremendous success, but not at the user adoption level they'd like. Anything else?
I'm assuming that this also could have been accomplished via agents in certain ways. Why did you choose Einstein?
We started the project when it was still Einstein Copilot free agent force for them. So part of it was the timing of when we started it. We are having conversations with them about some agentic applications of this and other data, more around bespoke messaging. How do I customize the message to you versus you type of thing. They really want to look at generative AI for that.
If you were gonna start this now with them, would you go more agentic or?
I don't know. So Vivi, did you hear that question? The question I get is, if you were to start this now versus when we did, when Copilot was really new, Einstein Copilot was new, would you do what we did with Agentforce? I'm imagining that some of it needs to get done with Prediction Builder just because of the nature of what it is, but maybe not next best action. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe next best action, because yeah, I remember one case that was demonstrated during Dreamforce last year about suggesting this personalized outreach. So it was it was suggesting an email for, I don't know if it was for donation increase or for like a thank you message, or I mean it was. So there are options, of course. I mean there are all those pre-built agentic options, but on the, as Jim said, on the predictions, I think that I would still go with Einstein Prediction Builder. On the next best action, yes, but on Prediction Builder, I would still go with that. No.
And the next best actions are based on Prediction Builder. Yeah.
Vivi and Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivi.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Vivi.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye bye. Ciao.